This is Bill McMinn from Makeable Bible Church, and this is the Way to Go podcast, where we talk about faith, family, and daily life, putting the Bible into practical, everyday terms. Welcome to the Way to Go podcast. Bill McMinn, along with Jerry. She's laughing right at the start. It's going to be a good podcast when you're already laughing.
Yeah.
You already think it's funny. I haven't even said anything
sort of
yet.
Sideways and not straight up and down. So I feel like I have to tip my head.
Is your mic bothering you?
It's fine.
You can adjust it. You're allowed to adjust things
This way. It's not a big deal.
I don't.
It has
no.
nothing to do with the circle that I'm actually talking into. So we're
just
good.
Get on the mic.
It's
and
gonna
talk
drive me
into
crazy.
It. Well, you know what I want to talk about today? I don't want to talk about your mic, actually. I just want to talk about the government, that they do have a right to govern. And I think sometimes
yes, they do.
we live in a society where people are like shocked or surprised that the government's going to govern. And so you'll see or hear different things about, especially in light of issue 1, which is really the hot topic, especially, for us as Christians, and don't agree with taking the life of a child in the womb and so on and so forth. But anyway, sometimes I hear, well, the support of the issue comes from, well, you can't let the government tell you what to do. That government, I'm not going to listen to an old white man. And that's government, because he's some old white dude. And then I'm thinking about our own county. Well, our state rep, before they redistrict, was Sarah Fowler.
Yeah.
Now our state senator in this district is Sandra O'Brien.
Yeah.
So those are over 25% of the population of the House of Representatives is female. So I'm thinking to myself, well, even that argument is nonsense. I'm going to listen to a bunch of old white guys tell me what to do. That government's I'm going to sock it to the government. No. You vote yes on issue 1, you're socking it to kids. That's what you're socking it to, little kids in the womb. So, but anyway, it still brings up a topic. And I'm voting no, to be clear, I'm voting no on issue 1. But it brings up a topic of government, and does the government have a right to govern? And in Romans 13:1, let everyone be subject to governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God. Consequently, whoever rebels against the authority is rebelling against what God has instituted, and those who do so will bring judgment on themselves. For rulers hold no terror for those who do right, but for those who do wrong. Do you want to be free from the fear of the one in authority? Then do what is right, and you will be commended. For the one in authority is God's servant for your good. Now, this is government. God's servant for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for the rulers do not bear the sword for no reason. They are God's servants, agents of wrath, to bring punishment on the wrongdoer. So they're supposed to be helping those who are doing righteous and commending those, and helping to prevent wrongdoing.
Right.
Right? I mean, that's obviously
part
of the role of government.
Instituted for.
We shouldn't be doing bad things. That's part of governing. Therefore, it is necessary to submit to authorities, not only because of possible punishment, but also as a matter of conscience. So one of the things that I see is the government can make laws. So what do you think about that? Just that one thing. Government can make laws.
Absolutely. The whole reason for government was instituted is to protect the people and preserve our rights. Obviously, when you get people in there that are corrupt, it can have corruption. But the overall purpose of the government is to protect the people that they govern.
So when I hear, well, Bill, there's people in support of this issue because they don't like the government telling people what to do. So I bring up, so the government can't tell you prostitution's wrong. The government can't make up speed limits.
Yeah.
The government can't say, hey, if you're a teacher, you can't sleep with a student. That's against the law.
Right.
I mean, it's so ridiculous. The whole notion that somehow the government cannot have a proactive stance towards protecting life, even life in the womb, is nonsense.
Yeah, it's ludicrous.
When in fact, the government makes rules all the time.
Right.
So they do make laws.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are all kinds of laws that we subject ourselves to. And if people weren't subject to the laws, I mean, you can see in some of these cities where they're not enforcing the laws, how it's impacting the people that live there. Because the government's no longer protecting them.
Yeah, well, I actually wanted to talk about that a little bit.
So, I mean, having, government institute law and then actually enforce the laws protects all of us.
Right. Because if you don't have the rules, like when you go into San Francisco, where they are no longer protecting businesses. They're
Right.
no longer protecting people. Actually, there was somebody in the news that said, hey, just want you to know, if you go to San Francisco, you're going to get robbed.
Right.
Your car's going to get broken into. Because in San Francisco, you can steal something, and if it's under $900 in value, I believe it is,
Yeah, you're not
they
gonna get in
won't,
trouble.
cops won't even come out for it.
Right.
So it's basically permission granted, and business after business after
they're
business
leaving.
is vacating San Francisco. Why? Because the laws aren't protecting the people.
Right.
And when government fails to protect people, then you have all kinds of problems. Now, we live in a day, and I want to take you to the whole concept of Pharaoh. Now, Pharaoh, I'm saying Pharaoh when Moses was born.
Right.
And Pharaoh's awful. And Pharaoh's awful because he said of the Israelis, you must throw every male child into the Nile River and kill them.
Yep.
Right?
Yes.
That's what you have to do. And so you look at the villain, man, Pharaoh's a villain. Can you imagine it on the reverse? If Pharaoh's saying, please do not throw your children into the river, please allow them a chance to live.
Right.
He'd be a hero, and it would be absurd to think that the people of Israel would be like, we're throwing our kids in the river. Watch this.
Yeah.
I'm going to go out there. I don't have time for this. I'm going to go out there and pitch my kids in the Nile River. You would think they're maniacs,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's
and
where
how,
we are.
How terrible. Yet we have a
Yeah.
government in Ohio who wants to say, let's protect life. And it's the citizens who are basically wanting to throw the child in the womb into the river,
Yeah.
so to speak. And that's when I look at this, I'm like, we got to start thinking about the way that we're living. Because actually, Pharaoh, the day of Moses, was doing what government shouldn't be doing. That's taking life. Our government is saying we want to protect life. Yet there are Christians who are barking about it saying, how dare they? How dare they tell us what to do? And I'm thinking, this is really out there. I mean, that the Christian community would not 100% support that endeavor.
Oh, it's craziness.
It is. I mean, it's unbelievable.
I mean, I just look at how warped the thinking is and how deceived people are from the truth when you consider these children.
Right.
That they truly are children, yet they use terminology that makes it seem like this child is not a real child. They use terms like viable.
Right.
What's viable? It's life. I mean,
Right.
the child is a life from the instant they are conceived, and to somehow put terms on what makes the child a child and what makes it not a child yet, it's like you're just messing with words,
Right.
and it's not truth.
Well, a couple things. So, I mean, when you look at the value of the child in life, you can't go to a hospital and get an abortion.
Absolutely
They're not going to do
not.
it. Why? Because they protect lives.
Yeah.
You look at if a woman is killed and she is pregnant, that's a double homicide. Why? Because we see that child as being
It's a life. Yeah.
And any parent that's ever lost a child or is stillborn or anything like that is devastating.
Sure.
Is so upsetting to them at that time, right?
Yes.
Because they realize that's my kid. Why do we ignore and turn our heads to it when you want to have an abortion? All of a sudden, that's not a kid.
Yeah,
No,
it's
that's
like
still a kid.
If you want the child, it's a child. But if you don't, then it's not. It makes no sense.
We are logically coming
Flawed.
apart at the
Yeah,
seams
everywhere.
when it comes to this one, right? Because it's just not the right thing to do. But the whole notion that government can't set rules, again, is nonsense, because they set rules that you can't be a prostitute, you can't put heroin in your body. They've got speed limit laws. They have rules on how close you could build a building to somebody else's property line, for which, you can't actually put a garage on my property. Why? Laws. Okay, the laws say you can't do it, and so you can't do it. You can't run around naked. That's one, right? And
Unless you're in San Francisco.
well, maybe someplace. I don't know.
I know.
But no, they had actually. We found a history book from a silver mining town that's a ghost town now, and we found a ledger of all the laws. And one of the laws was you can't walk the streets naked, and men can't dress like women. That was a law too.
Yeah.
So I don't know what all was going on in that old ghost town, but they had rules on how much dynamite any one building could have, because they realized they blew up one, they'd blow up more. to all
Right.
these wood houses. So they had all kinds of rules. Like we were reading through, what some of those laws were.
Yeah.
But guess what? As the government, they had every right to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and on, so on and so forth, write the laws and spell it out. How much you can put away in an IRA. That's the law. Conceal and carry. There's laws about that. And you have to have a permit. You can't just conceal and carry without a permit. If you're stopped by a cop, you have to declare it. Over and over and over again, laws to keep you safe, laws to keep law enforcement safe, law to keep students safe in school, what a teacher can and cannot do with a student, right? And especially sexually. Yep. Certain things you're not allowed to do, right? Thank God, we actually have rules of statutory rape and things like that.
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
that's the government's job. So if the government is going to make a rule and say, yeah, we think children should be protected in the womb, and abortion can only go, they can only be alive so far in the womb where we'd allow abortion, and then in Ohio they want to make it the heartbeat rule, that after that, let's say roughly 6 weeks, you can't have an abortion after that. They have a right as the government to do that.
Yes.
Right? And people are barking about it, and I do not, absolutely don't get it, because here's the thing. You don't have a right to kill a child, because sometimes people say this: keep the government out of your bedroom.
Yeah.
I have a right to privacy. It's a private matter. It's sacred. It's private. Really? Is that how we thought about slavery?
Right.
One thing that I liked about in the slavery days, there was definitely clarity of thought. The North wasn't like, well, we don't have slaves, but Virginia, if you want to, that's okay.
Yeah.
And North Carolina and South Carolina, if you want to, that's okay. They didn't say that. They said, it's not okay.
This is wrong.
This is wrong. There was right and wrong. It wasn't this thing of, that's a private choice between you and your family if you want to have slaves or not.
Right.
They just said it's wrong. But we turn it into things like abortion, like, that's a private matter.
Yeah.
No, forget all about your right to privacy and reproductive rights. The kid has a right. That's all. I've been saying it. I'm going to keep saying it. Children have rights too. The right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. They have that.
Yeah.
And you can't just make it a private thing. And we haven't done it in the past with things. We don't say between a teacher and a student. And there's been stories where a 34-year-old woman and a 12-year-old boy, we don't say that was
private.
That was private.
Yeah.
That was a private decision that they made. No, we just say, no, that was wrong. And I don't care who said what. I don't care who consented to what. You can't do it. There's a certain things you can't do. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's fair.
For sure.
And we as government, we're told here in this passage that we need to submit to what the laws are. And again, the laws are protecting the citizenry. Like we were talking about San Fran. There's not enough laws protecting the business owners.
No.
And because of that, or the people, because of that, it becomes a problem. Now, in Boston, Massachusetts, I believe it is, they actually have a whole 10 mile or city or whatever they call it. They're dismantling it. They went in, they said, you guys can't be in here. Why? Because it was starting to have a super negative impact.
Right.
And the government is doing what the government's supposed to do, saying, hey,
protect everybody else.
Yeah, you got to protect the whole.
Yeah.
But freedom also doesn't mean no rules. And when I was a kid, I told my dad, and I said, I can't wait to get out of the house because there's going to be no rules. Yeah. And he just started laughing at me. He goes, what are you talking about, son? There's going to be rules. He goes, you got rules from the government. You're going to be working. Your employer is going to have rules. There's always rules. He said, there's no such thing.
Yeah.
He said, there's no such thing as life without rules. And so for me, in my mind, when I get out of the house, there won't be one rule, not anywhere. And not to mention, by the way, there was God's rules too. So, I mean, it was ridiculous. So to think that freedom means no rules is nonsense because freedom makes sense with rules.
Well, and I think too, even when our founding fathers, established the Constitution, they assume that with the freedom, you accept the responsibility that comes with freedom.
Right.
And just like when you have a child and as they grow and get older, you exercise a little more freedom to them. You give them more and more freedoms, but then they have to behave responsibly with the freedom that you gave them, or we were going to take that freedom away until they learn to handle it. And I think as citizens in our state and our country, we have a responsibility to use the freedoms that we are given well. And I feel in this day and age, people are just abusing the freedom, and they're overstepping the freedoms now to just kind of obliterate some of the laws and the common sense things, that 100 years ago, 50 years ago, when people would be like, what on earth are you thinking?
Right.
It's nonsense. But now it's like, how dare you say something is nonsense?
Right.
You might offend someone.
Well, right now, I mean, when it comes to laws and who makes laws, the legislature makes laws. We in Ohio are trying to bypass the legislature with issue 1, issue 2, and other issues that have been on the ballot prior. We're trying to circumnavigate the legislature by saying, no, you have no right to make the rules. We as the people are going to make the rules. That's really not, we're not really that kind of democracy. Like, our country is run by, you elect officials, the officials make decisions. Just even in our church, the same way. The church, you'll elect certain people to be in office. People in office are making decisions representing the entire church. That's how it works. That's how it's supposed to work, not what we're doing right now. How we're operating as a state right now, somebody could get a ballot and get enough signatures to put a measure on the ballot to amend the Constitution. The prostitution could be legalized.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Fact.
Which is nuts. Well,
I'm just saying, do you think it's that far-fetched?
Oh, no, not at all. Right. I don't think it's far-fetched at all. And one of the issues, too, that I think some people don't even know, maybe because they don't listen in history class or something, but when government was instituted, like when I think of our national government, I mean, you have the executive branch, the legislative, the judicial branches. It's called checks and balances. Each each branch has a responsibility. But then when this whole COVID thing came, then they started with these executive orders where all of a sudden a president can just say something and make it law instead of having to go through the process of going through the legislature where they make the laws because they represent the people.
Right. And your representatives are based upon what the population of any given state is. Every state gets 2 senators.
Right.
Every state has the same representation in the Senate, but your House of Representatives depend on the population of the state. Mm-hmm. And that becomes important. But when you have executive orders, all of a sudden that's all
nothing matters.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
It bypasses the people, and it's not right. You know what I mean? Because then it almost also becomes like with a vote like this, it almost becomes like a mob rule.
Right.
Instead of representing the entire state, it represents where the most people are.
Right.
And it doesn't represent everyone.
Right. Yeah, I'm totally against the way I know I don't talk about politics a lot, but I would be in that ability for us to, as citizens, change the church the state constitution. And it makes me, as we get further and further into the shadows, so to speak, out into the woods and get lost out there, I just wonder how wise is make decisions, because I can see they want to legalize pot smoking too. Yeah. I'm like, well, what's that going to do for businesses? What's that going to do for people who say, no, I don't want you having that influence in you when you come to work, so on and so forth. You know, I think about in the NFL, you're not even allowed, if you have pot in your system, you're going to get suspended. Right. Mm-hmm. So, and now they legalize it. I wonder what it means for all those things. And I wonder, what are we doing? And here's what we're using our freedom for in Ohio this year. Oh, you know what we're going to use our freedom for? To put things on the amendment. We want to abort babies and we want to smoke pot. And I'm thinking, couldn't we do something better? But no, because listen, sinful humanity, this is kind of the way we go. You get down to some of those base things. And the fact is, that's the kind of stuff that we think I'm not saying somebody thought was important enough to put on there.
It shows what happens when you get away from the Bible and you get away from the truth of God's word, because all of a sudden it just becomes, how do I feel? What do I think? Well, what I think is not always based in truth. It might just be based in how I feel about something. And my feelings don't make good decisions sometimes.
No, we need leadership, and we need to follow the leadership who make good decisions based on all this, because sometimes we don't always know what the best decision is. We didn't turn our kids loose to make the decisions for themselves when they're kids, because we realized they were kids and they didn't always know better.
Right.
Sometimes the decisions that people would make in the majority doesn't mean that's really what's best for everybody. And I've argued this for a long time. Pot smoking should not be legalized. Right now, they should leave it like it is. People really don't get in trouble for it, but there's still at least some deterrent there, because it's still against the law. It's still a misdemeanor. I fear for what's going to happen when you take it out of the way. It would be like, you have 70 miles an hour. Does anyone really go 70 miles an hour down the interstate? Probably a lot of times not. But they don't usually go over 80 either. You put it to 80, they're all going to 90. You take it away, they're going to be driving 100. And people are going to start really getting hurt. And that's my fear of it, is just as you take these deterrents out of the way and remove them, these safeguards that we've had, it's really not good.
Yeah, there's a reason it's illegal.
Right.
Well, it's not good for you.
John Adams, second president of the United States, one of the founding fathers, said, because we have and he was talking about the importance of being moral as a people and the importance of religion in the hearts and lives of the people in order for America to work. And he said, we have no government armed with power capable of contending with human passions that are unbridled by morality and religion. He said, we can't even handle, we don't have enough people, the wherewithal to handle if you're just out there doing whatever you want all the time, right? Avarice, ambition, revenge, or gallantry would break the strongest cords of our Constitution as a whale goes through a net. Our Constitution was made only for the moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. That was the second president of the United States who followed George Washington, a founding father, a highly intelligent guy. He's like, we need morality. Yeah. Okay, if you think that going in ways of immorality is going to be good for the country, oh man.
Look where we're at.
Look where we're at already. Yeah. I mean, we can, people can hardly figure out what gender they are. So you look at how messed up the world is at this moment, and think we're just taking steps more and more into that. So for me, I mean, I'm definitely voting no on issue 1 in Ohio.
Me too.
Because I'm voting for the rights for kids, which is to vote no on that. Because I believe every kid has a chance to live and has a right to live, and I want them to be able to come out, breathe the fresh air, and experience the world as I've had that opportunity as well. But the whole notion that government can't make rules and there's something horrid, the government not going to tell me what to do, is totally losing sight of what it's all about. As I talked to one person recently, I said, do you want anarchy? I mean, you have anarchy here. I'm going to tell you what, they're going to be busting into your house at will, and there's not going to be anyone to stop them. Anarchy is definitely not what you want.
No.
We need laws to govern. Now, a lot of people don't need the laws to make them behave, but like Paul said, it's for the weakest, and there's always going to be the weakest. So we need the laws to protect everybody across the board. Yeah. Anyway, I hope this has been a beneficial podcast for you to listen to. We appreciate you tuning in today. You guys have a great and an awesome week.